What the Tech is sponsored by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks, with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. Squarespace, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code WhatTheTech1. And by Carbonite Online Backup, automatic, continual, and unlimited backups for your computer. Try it for free at Carbonite.com and use offer code WhatTheTech and get 2 bonus months with purchase.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I am Andrew Zarian, and of course I'm joined by my amazing co-host,
Jeez.
head of Windows here at the GFQ Network, Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
I'm okay.
Director of all things Windows.
It's been a little crazy today.
Now, are we going to put Pele or are we going to put Anderson here in the studio, Paul?
What do you mean?
For Windows. Oh, no. You mean the other kind of Windows. That's what
What
you
are
know.
you talking about?
Oh, okay. I thought we were actually
no.
changing Windows.
Not that kind of Windows.
Today, we are going to discuss a lot of things here on the show. We're going to be talking about the new announcement from Microsoft for Office 2013. We're going to be discussing some Apple news, which I'm very interested in to hear Paul's opinion on this.
I've come full circle.
Yeah, so why don't we start off with that? Because this story came out a couple days ago that Apple was going to announce a 128 gig iPad, and I guess they announced it today that it's happening. It's out, and it undercuts the Surface Pro.
Yeah.
And this has to be a direct response to the Surface Pro being released, I guess, February 9th.
I'm so all over the map on this. I fear that I'm not going to be able to explain my thoughts about this adequately.
Do your best. Do your best.
I mean, for one thing, realistically speaking, actually the iPad doesn't compete directly with Surface Pro.
Not at all.
The iPad, well, not quite, right? I mean, the iPad is really a competitor to Surface RT. As someone pointed out to me on Twitter just moments ago, Surface Pro competes with the MacBook Air. And fair enough, Microsoft actually describes the Surface Pro as a sort of ultrabook, and so that there's some fairness to that contention.
But would it be fair to say that they all at this point compete with each other?
They don't all compete with each other, but actually, yeah, I would say it is fair to say that when Apple puts out a 120 gigabyte iPad, or 2 of them, I guess, and has been pushing this notion of a post-PC world where the iPad is the mainstream computer of the future. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously they do compete. I mean, you cannot buy a 128 gigabyte Surface RT. The 128 gigabyte Surface Pro is $999, and the 128 gigabyte iPad is, I think, $799. So, they compete in the sense that for a group of people that may or may not be the same people, by the way, this could be their computer. What we think of today as like a laptop or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, they do sort of compete. Not quite. I mean, not quite.
Because for me, there's no competition, obviously, between having a full-fledged PC and having a tablet, having an iPad. I mean, they don't really compete in my sense. But for
depends
someone,
on who you are,
But for someone else, I mean, I could tell you firsthand, I have relatives that exclusively use iPads at this point.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. So, in other words, let's say you had like a Mac or a PC and you used it for 5 years. And now you're kind of shopping around. It's getting a little long in the tooth. And I think, for a pretty big group of people, you could buy an iPad. And maybe you buy it with the idea of, well, I won't replace my PC for a year or two. We'll see how this goes. And then what you discover over time is like, actually, the iPad does pretty much everything I want. I mean, every once in a while, maybe you need to go to the PC to print something or whatever it may be, scan something in, whatever. But, by and large, mainstream computing activities, maybe the iPad does the trick. So, yeah, it's very complicated. I've struggled with this for all the years the iPad's been around, how to position this thing vis-a-vis PCs. But yeah, increasingly, and this 120 gig version, I would say, pushes it more into that territory. Yeah, I mean, it does compete with it in some ways. You know,
what are you going to store on there? I've always wondered that because we're so cloud centric now with everything that we do. I mean, I just started using after all these years, and it's such a shame for me to say this because I do a tech show and I'm all involved, and I consider myself, connected to all this stuff. I just started using Google Music on my phone.
Right.
I retagged all my stuff, as you guys know, and I put everything in Google Music, and I use it with Bluetooth in my car almost every time that I'm driving. All my podcasts are on there now. I don't have anything stored on here. It's a 16 gig phone or 32 gig phone, and I have virtually nothing stored, only my apps. So
what I found is that a 32 gigabyte Surface Pro is fine for me. Surface Pro, I'm sorry, Surface RT. In that, as is the case for me on phones and the tablets, I don't really run that many apps, and the apps aren't that humongous. And like you, I do a lot of the content stuff in the cloud. Google Music, the way that works, or if you use Amazon or if you use Xbox Music, you can stream everything live over the internet, or you can trigger some stuff to download to the device so you can use it offline. So this stuff all works fine. But the way that the iPad is unique, and this is somewhat ironic given its post-PC aspirations, is that when Apple put that Retina screen on the iPad, it exploded the size of apps because those things need to be ginormous to for the graphics that accompany them, right? If they had kept that thing at kind of a normal res, which frankly I think would have been fine, that wouldn't have been an issue. Jeff Bezos, who runs Amazon, was talking about this when they introduced the Kindle Fire HD. He said, once we went to an HD screen, we had to double the size of the storage on these things because the apps are just bigger. And on the Retina display, it's even worse.
What was the excuse for that? Wait a minute. That was the excuse for something. The reason why there was no HD or, God, what was the excuse? Oh, that's the excuse
the Mini.
for the Touch, right? Well, the Touch
doesn't have HD, but it has a 960 by 640. It's still pretty good. But the other aspect of the iPad, which I think is unique amongst tablets, is that there are a lot of apps for the iPad.
Tremendous.
A lot of apps.
Yeah.
And I think people who like the iPad are invested in apps and have a lot of apps. And so when you combine this with the Retina, the Retina issue I just brought up, and the fact that many people do view the iPad as a PC, if you will, as a computer, as the device that they use, the big screen device they use, you could treat this like you might treat the one PC that you may use otherwise, where it has everything on it. And so in that case, creating documents with iWork, watching movies with iTunes, you got your music collection on there, you're playing a bunch of games, and you've got apps, and those things take up a lot of space. Maybe 128 gigabytes actually makes sense in the context of an iPad, where on the Surface RT especially, it doesn't make as much sense. It doesn't matter as much.
You know what? You may be right, because I'm thinking, well, what is someone going to do if this is their exclusive device, right? This is their only. I mean, they don't have anything else. They don't have maybe they have a laptop. They really don't use it. This is what they're consuming all their media on, all their news, all their emails, whatever. They even have a little keyboard. Every time you go to iTunes and you download, let's say, a song, right? Most of these people are not saying, okay, I'm going to store it in iMatch on the cloud, on iCloud, and listen to it that way. They're probably downloading and storing this locally, along with their media.
Actually, the way iTunes Match works is you actually do download it if you play it. So there's no streaming in iTunes Match, as there is, not true streaming, as there is on the other services. And so we'll see if that changes. There's been a lot of hints about Apple putting out a radio type service, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so I mean, so you pretty much need the storage if you're doing a lot of media consumption on an iPad. I guess there is a place for this.
That's my argument. Now, all right, so I've been pretty positive about it for the most part. The only downside of this, though, is I've always sort of argued that the iPad was too expensive for what it was, and when you look at the iPad lineup as it stands today, because they haven't yet updated it. You get 16 gigabytes, you get 32, you get 64. It runs from $500 up to $700. What I much, much, much rather would have seen them do is bump all of them down so that the entry level was now 32, which makes sense for a Retina device. The mid-level was 64. The big one was 128, and that the prices remain the same, 5 to 700. But what Apple did was they introduced this 128 gigabyte version at $800 for Wi-Fi and for $930 for
4G.
LTE. That's crazy. I mean, that the problem is once you get up into that price point, that's MacBook Air.
It's a MacBook Air, yeah, $1,000.
Granted, obviously the advantages the iPad has over the MacBook Air are the same as the advantages it has over the PC. It does have that higher res screen. I mean, the reading experience is probably pretty good with that kind of a high res screen. I'm sure the games are beautiful and all that kind of stuff. And people like the touch and all that stuff, battery life, everything. It's still kind of that's a tough one. It's a tough one. I really wish that they had done what I just described. And honestly, when I heard rumors of a 120 gig iPad, I assumed it was for the next version that will come out in the spring, and that was what they would do with the prices.
The entry would be 32 gigs.
Yeah, because Apple doesn't like, there's two ways that Apple can lower prices. They can actually lower prices, which they do rarely, but they do sometimes. Or they introduce more storage, more functionality, more capabilities at the same price points. And this would have satisfied that need,
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. It makes sense. And they could have put an 8 gig and a 16 gig on the Mini, and then the iPad begins at 32.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you think there's a place now with the fact that there's so many of them on the market now? You have the iPad Mini, you have the Retina. The Retina is going to obviously have more storage now, so more options of that. Is there a place for the iPad 2? What are they going to do next generation? We're 3 generations behind now at this point with the iPad 2.
I think there are too many iPads.
Way too many. Okay.
I think if they bump down the price, maybe that's the key. I mean, maybe the 16 stays in the market, goes down $100 and satisfies this need, and that replaces the iPad 2. And then they can have an iPad Mini, which of course will go Retina, and an iPad, whatever it is, 4th or what I guess that would be 5th generation. And that's it. Maybe the 16 gig Retina iPad replaces the iPad 2.
Replaces it at $399.
Yeah.
I mean, or they have a Retina non-Retina iPad on the market, and that's always the iPad
I wish
regular.
I actually think they need to get away from that. They're at the point now where they have too many resolutions for developers to support in the apps, and it would be kind of interesting for them to lower the number of reses that they're supporting. So if they could get rid of 1024 by 768 in one whack by getting rid of the iPad 2 and the iPad Mini, the current version, I think that would make life a lot easier on developers over time.
The advantage that they have over Microsoft in this case is because a lot of people have iPhones, much more than people have Windows phones at this point. And I think it's that you're right. It's once you're in the ecosystem and once you're in the environment of iOS, the odds are you're going to stick with it, and that's why people go and buy iPads.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the Surface, do you think this will affect the Surface in any case? I mean, I don't think the people that are buying the Surface Pro or even the Surface RT are, their sales being taken away, Apple's sales being taken away by them. I think it's a specific group of people that are buying this.
Well, I think it's fair to say there's a specific group of people buying both of these things. All of these things have trade-offs. It's not hard. You don't have to have a Surface in front of you, a Surface Pro, to know that 4.5 to 5 hours of battery life is not good, not compared to 8 to 9 hours that you get on Surface RT, and not get to whatever the crazy battery life you get is on the iPad, probably 10 hours, whatever. So there's a trade-off for you. And so you get all of the advantages of the PC ecosystem and all that kind of stuff, and great, we all love that. There's also a weirdness on the Windows side that's not a case for the iPad at all, and is certainly less of a case for a Mac OS X as well, where the Surface Pro has a 10.6-inch screen, or whatever size screen it is, but it's 1080p. Okay, I get it. Like I'm, 40 whatever years old now, 46, 47. I don't know how old I am. 46 years old. I'm getting senile, clearly. I can't look at a screen that small at 100% scaling and see anything. Like the pixels are so teeny, I can't read the writing on icons. I can't, I have to bump everything up. So the only alternative on such a machine, if you're going to use it just as the tablet, is to bump up the display scaling, which on Windows kind of stinks. And if you want to do the full like power user PC experiencing thing and blast that display out to a secondary display, Windows is not sophisticated enough, not the desktop part of it, to change the scaling on both displays. So you can't have 100% scaling up on the big screen and 150 down on the tablet. It has to be the same on both. So you're either going to have a big screen that looks great and a small screen that you can't see, or a small screen that looks great and a big screen that looks like a giant Play School operating system with icons that are 2 inches high.
Well, that's the problem with any kind of secondary monitor that's not the same resolution. We have the same
these
problem
kind of things that frustrate me a lot, and it's one of the many reasons why when Apple moves to what is essentially a display, or I should say, a resolution independent type display with the iPad, that's an important advance. Microsoft is actually doing it. I should be fair on this. They're doing a good job of it in the Metro environment, right? Which is not true resolution independence, but much better about that stuff. One of the things I'm going to be very eager to test is whether, say in a Kindle reading app, whether the text looks a lot better on the 1080p display of the Surface Pro compared to the 1366 screen of the RT. But as far as Metro goes, like the start screen with the tiles, they're going to look identical, right next to each other. Those two machines you will not be able to tell them apart.
And why is that?
Because that's display independent, or resolution independence, essentially. In other words, it's designed properly.
Yeah.
It's something that Microsoft took the time to do on Metro because it's new, but they're only kind of half-assing, if you will, on the desktop because it's old and they don't really.
But it's even on the Mac right now. I'm trying to think when we use a secondary display on the Mac that I'm doing right now, it scales it to
right. Well, the Mac does a better job of it.
It does a better job, but it's totally different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mac's always done better at that. I mean, in the early days with OS 10, it was simply a matter of using bigger bitmaps for the icons. They do a better job of scaling their desktop than Windows does. I would say that once we move up to Metro, it's probably technically fair to say that iOS does do a better job of achieving something like resolution independence. But honestly, Metro does a great job of that too, and those two things are, they're comparable, I would say.
Very cool stuff, Paul. We do need to take a little break and talk about our first advertiser of the show, and that's Squarespace. We're switching it up today, Paul. We're going to go with Squarespace. What is that, Paul?
I can handle it.
Okay. Just preparing you. The show is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. We talk about this almost every week now. I really like the service. Paul's been using the service. I've been recommending it to a lot of people. Chauncey Hayden from the Chauncey Hayden Show here on the network. He's a photographer. I don't know if a lot of people know that. They know him from the Howard Stern Show, but they don't know that he's a photographer. And I recently, this Wednesday, when I was at the show with him, I convinced him to open up a Squarespace site and to add all of his images. He doesn't have a portfolio, and he's a photographer. He's a brilliant photographer. And he goes, well, I don't want to make a website because I don't understand how to make it. I'm going to have to go to you. And I go, no. Go to Squarespace, sign up for it, and I go guide you. But it's super easy to add images. The great thing about it is if you're a photographer, it scales all your images depending on what device it is. So let's say you add one image to the site. There's 7 different versions you've created, and it correctly loads them per device. So it looks professional no matter what kind of device you're viewing it on. It's 100% drag and drop, beautiful templates that they supply you with. And if you're a developer and you want to do some coding on your own, no need to worry because they have a developer version of Squarespace. So you can do all the nitty-gritty stuff that I personally don't like messing with. If you go to squarespace.com, you could sign up and use offer code WhatTheTech1. And if you decide after the trial that you're going to stick with Squarespace, you get 10% off your first purchase on a new account. It's phenomenal. I absolutely love these guys. Squarespace.com. They're actually located in New York, too, and another reason why I should support them. Squarespace.com. Use offer code WhatTheTech1 when you sign up and get 10% off if you decide to keep it. No credit card needed. Thank you, Squarespace, for supporting the show. A little quick read there for Squarespace. But I do want to move on to the big news from today, and that's Office. I know you were really busy, Paul, today with a lot of Office stuff. You were writing a blog earlier. You were writing an article about it this morning.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on. you want to just sum it up really quickly, and then I want to go into the discussion where is it necessary to have Office in 2013?
It is for me.
Okay,
I mean,
for
it
you.
depends on what your needs are.
Okay.
I would say, well, I'm a writer, so I use Word every single day. I live in OneNote as well. A lot of people live in Outlook. I don't, but a lot of people use Outlook every day. And it's interesting. I think the core apps, which would also include PowerPoint and Excel, are obviously tier A, number one rated in their categories. And that a lot of people simply can't live without those apps. One or more of those apps. And so, yeah, I would say Office is. I do a regular examination of the software that I install on my systems because I reinstall things again and again and again for testing purposes. And I've always been trying to get that core set down as far as possible. Office is one that is never going away. And Photoshop is one of the other ones. One of the big ones I'd kind of like to get rid of. In fact, I use Photoshop for very specific reasons for photos and graphics on my website, and I'd love to find something that was a little more efficient for that kind of stuff. So maybe someday, but a lot of the other stuff I do is web based or online services based or whatever. So you never know.
And the thing about Photoshop is that the Adobe the Creative Cloud suite that they have, it's $50 a month. It's not cheap.
No, I don't use it. I use the Elements one because it's just so inexpensive.
Yeah, I mean, if you're spending that kind of money, might as well. I don't know. I would rather own the physical. Again, this is the weird thing because I'm so cloud-based. I would rather, if I'm spending $500, I would rather have it instead of having it, in the cloud somewhere. But Microsoft is not doing that. It's $99 for the year for Office 365.
For Office 365 Home Premium.
Home
right?
Premium,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing because obviously we have the traditional Office applications and the traditional Office suites, which you can still buy if you want to. You can go to a store. You can get them bundled on a new computer even. They're about as expensive as they used to be, but the one caveat is that for Office Home and Student, which used to be 3 licenses, so you can install it on 3 computers, now they only have 1 license in that package.
And I believe it's $79 for Student, right? Or it was. I mean, the previous
that's
years.
that's a different. That's an Office 365 thing. I'll get to that in a moment. But
okay.
The big advance that's occurring with this version is that they're offering it as part of a subscription now, worldwide, mostly for the first time. In other words, they've had some subscriptions, but this is the big blast. The other new thing with this version is that they have a consumer-oriented version of Office 365. And the confusing aspect of that is, if you know anything about Office 365, and most consumers don't, but for people who do know what Office 365 is, Office 365 Home Premium bears almost zero relationship to the other versions of Office 365. It does not include Exchange-based email in the cloud, SharePoint-based document repository and sharing in the cloud, link-based communications in the cloud, or any of that. So Office 365 Home Premium, which just launched today, is a new offering. It's completely different from all the other versions of Office 365. However, if you have a family or have some kind of multi-PC need, it is an incredible value. It's $99 a year. You get 5 installs. It's a household license. And so you can install copies of, right now it's Office 2013 on a PC or a Windows device, or Office 2010 for the Mac, I think is the latest version, up to 5. In the future, it's going to include other versions of Office, iPad, Android tablets, and so forth. Mm-hmm. It is literally a household license. So if you like I have a family of 4 people, I can and have installed this on all of the computers that everyone uses here. And that's perfectly not just legal, it's the point of it. And
everything is accessible on the cloud no matter what kind of device you're using.
Yeah. Now, if you have people who know Windows phones or Windows RT know that those devices come with Office. Mm-hmm. Those don't count against these 5 licenses. If you have those, you can continue to use them. There are other benefits to it. I mean, off the top of my head, it's like 60 minutes of Skype World minutes per month. It's 20 gigabytes of additional SkyDrive storage for the primary account holder only. Free upgrades for the life of it. And they're going to upgrade this thing quarterly. Probably they won't commit to that, but along the same lines of the upgrading they've been doing for Office 365 in the past, and not every 3 years like they've done for Office. So you get all the upgrades as they come. And the version of Office you get with this, which you You actually, it's interesting how it works. You when you install it, it streams from the internet. It fully installs in your computer. It is a full-fledged offline version of Office, just like one you would buy in the store. Installs very quickly. You can't customize it, but it is the version that would otherwise be sold as, I think it's called Office Professional 2013, meaning it includes those core Office apps, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and OneNote, plus Outlook, Access, and Publisher.
Which that's great. That's everything you
yeah,
want.
I mean, a lot of people don't need all those apps, but if you were to buy that as a standalone Office suite, it's $400.
Can you? People have been asking me, can you pay monthly for it?
Yeah, actually, there is a way to do that. I think I don't have the site up in front of me, but I want to say it's $9.99.
Oh, $9.99 a month. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to do it right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I have it. Let me see if I could pull it up here. Nope, the wrong camera. Here we go. So $9.99 a month, or you pay $99 for the year. So it's not bad at all. It's really, I mean, that's really good.
Yeah, and this is interesting to me because like Windows 8, but even more aggressively in some ways, this is a way to take a product that is the most traditional, locally installed software product known to man and kind of turn it into an online service. It's not a true online service because unlike, say, Google Docs, you're not hitting a web browser in the sky, although, by the way, you have that access as well. Mm-hmm. These things are installed in your computers, but it's so liberal, like the licensing policy. So, for example, if you have 5 computers with this thing installed, go to the website and say, I want to install this on another computer. They'll say, well, you have to deactivate one of the other ones. You pick the one you want to deactivate, doesn't uninstall it on that computer. You install it on a new computer. And now later you want to go back and use it on the other one. It says, well, actually, you've already using 5 licenses, so you have to deactivate another one. It doesn't remove the software. It still works in kind of a read-only way. Okay. And then you can deactivate and reactivate on the fly. You could technically install it on however many computers you want, just deactivate, activate on the fly. The other thing you can do, which is really kind of interesting, and this is one of those things, like, I think people might not realize they might want to do this, but in addition to being able to access the Office web apps from the SkyDrive or Office.com site, you can also do something called Office on Demand, which will stream any of those applications that come with Office 365 Home Professional to any computer anywhere in the world. You have to log in with your account, streams it down to the computer. You access all of your documents up in SkyDrive. You can edit, save, open, create new ones, whatever. And then when you close the application, it disappears completely from that computer. So you could use it on a friend's computer, family member's computer. You could be at a hotel somewhere halfway around the world or in an internet cafe, whatever. Pretty cool. So there's a bunch of stuff going on, and it's a really neat way for Microsoft to move this kind of traditional product.
I just bought it, by the way, just now.
Yeah,
and
they make it really easy to buy.
They make it really easy, and by the way, this is not an ad for Office. I wish it was, but it's not. When you go to buy it, and this was a question I was going to have for Paul while I was buying it. I'm like, hey, how does it work on the Mac? It says install information, PC plus Mac install, available installs 5 of 5. So every time you install it, it'll go down one on your account page. Yep. So it'll say 4 of 5, 3 of 5, whatever. That's great.
Yeah, so eventually they'll update the Mac version of Office, and you'll get that automatically when it happens.
So this is the older version of the Mac.
Yeah, it's 2010.
2010, okay.
2011, maybe. I don't know.
Now, here's what I want to talk about, and I would love to hear what the viewers think, because it's an interesting argument to have. With things like Google Drive and Google Docs being available on almost everybody's computer now, because almost everybody has Gmail.
Yep.
Is this a direct response to Google coming out with a free solution, or is this something that they're saying, okay, we have to go cloud-based? Because everybody knows Office, but if you're giving $500 away to buy Office, because a lot of people did. I used to buy Office at full retail every time I would get it.
Most people in the past wouldn't go out and buy Office unless they bought the home and student version.
So
right?
what would they do?
They would get it with a new computer. So this will change a little bit going forward. Going forward, or I should say in the near past, they used to have something called Office 2010 Starter Edition. Starter Edition was a really watered-down version of Office that was designed for PC installs only. It included a very basic version of Word and a very basic version of Excel. And there's some kind of advertising in the product in a task pane on the side that would let you go to the web and order the real thing. That's gone. And now what you're going to see as the base PC bundle is an Office 365 Home Premium trial, which lasts for 30 days, and it gives you this whole thing. And so the hope is that people will, stream this thing down, install it, and be like, oh my God, this is incredible. It's only $99 a year. I'll totally do this.
Yeah.
That's the theory. But you still have that. You could, if you know that you only want one copy of Office, you're buying a new computer, you know how it is. You go through Dell or HP or Lenovo or whatever. There'll be the other options in there. And instead of the free trial of Office 365, you could buy Home and Student. You could buy Office Home Premium, or I'm sorry, small. I don't remember the versions anymore. Whatever the versions are of Office. Professional is in there and so forth. You have that choice.
With the past versions of Office, you were only technically allowed to install it on one computer, right?
It depends. So on the previous version, mostly yes, it was one. Home and Student was 3. In the previous versions to that, there was a kind of a dual use license where it was designed so that you could install, you'd install one at your work computer and then you'd install one on a laptop so you could use it at home.
Okay. But it had to be 2 different networks.
Well, they don't check that way.
They caught me every time. I don't know what it was.
So the only time they ever checked on a network was Home and Student.
Home and Student, yeah.
Yeah, so that was true on the Mac and it was true on the PC as well, yeah.
So
because that was a 3 license deal.
Do you think people that are using Google Docs are going to go and say, okay, now it's $9.99, I could have Office again?
I don't know.
Because
I guess I would say this, because obviously there's a set of people who think that Google Docs is fine, it's enough, it's all they need, and God bless them. Google has been working to reinstate offline support to those apps. They added it again, I think, to the presentation package recently. I think they have it in Docs as well, so spreadsheets are next, and we'll see how that goes. But I think the way to look at this is, when you're a hammer, you see everything as a nail. So Google is a supplier of web services. And so the way that they approach word processing and spreadsheets and presentations is to make a web app, and it runs in the web. And that's how they view things. Microsoft comes from a more traditional background, and they make traditional software that runs on computers. And that's how they view things. As we look at this world that is merging with online services and cloud computing and thinner, lighter, smaller devices with less storage, onboard storage space and everything, I find personally, and maybe it's just my own, I don't want to call it bias, but just my experience from using Windows PCs for so long, I think Microsoft's approach is actually better because it hits all of those areas. They do have an online word processor, spreadsheet, presentation package, and note-taking package that's free for anybody that wants to use it, just like Google does, and they're better than what Google has. But they also have the locally installable apps, which are just, an order of magnitude better. They work with online services. The default way that Office 2013 works is that your documents are stored in SkyDrive, or if you have the business version, in SharePoint. And it's just, they're so well designed. They are just, to me, clearly superior. Are they $99 a year superior? That's up to you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always used Office, and I didn't want to use Google Docs until I got a Mac, and I couldn't run Office on here because I had purchased, Office 2010 or whatever it was, and I had spent all that money, and really I couldn't install it on this thing, and I didn't want to go and buy it, so I started using Google Docs, and I really haven't used Office ever since then.
I can't say that I've tried not to use Office, but every time, Google will come up with an announcement like they did recently, and they said, hey, we just updated.
Paul. I was forced to.
Well, I try everything. So when Google announces, hey, here's a new version of some Google Apps thing, I try it. I do the offline thing. I see how it works. I do this with Apple. I do this with Google. I do this with all kinds of things. And I did this for a long time with OpenOffice. I've tried everything. I've tried every Office product and service imaginable. Every time they come out, I try every single one. I always go back to Office. Office is the one thing where it's irreplaceable to me for what I do for a living. I just can't live without it. I had a dream for a while there that the online version of Office, the Office web apps, would be enough. The truth is I like having this offline capability. Yeah. I do this all the time. I'll be working here in my office where I'm sitting now, working on a document. I close it. I walk in the other room, open my Ultrabook, load the same document. I go back exactly to the same point in the document where I was. It's completely up to date because it was saved on SkyDrive. They've had this functionality for years. It works great. And I can get on a plane and work on that thing. Works offline. It works great. Always has. And when I connect to Wi-Fi at the hotel I'm staying at, everything syncs up and I'm good to go. So as far as I'm concerned, that stuff just works great. It just always has. And I don't see any reason not to use it.
So I have about 30 seconds left in the download. Thanks Verizon Fios' amazing speeds. I downloaded this thing at 4 megabits a second, and I'm going to install it while we're doing this. But I'm glad that this is out because I've always felt that Google Docs and nobody could say that it's better than Office. I mean, it gets the job done.
People have asserted that to me.
No,
it's certainly simpler. By the way, one of the reasons I can't use it is it's a dumb thing, but and certainly applicable only to me. But everything that well, not everything, but most of what I write ends up on the web and goes through very specific web forms, for uploading and so forth. Word always works perfectly. The formatting on Google Docs documents is so screwed up it is literally unusable. So, again, it's one of those things. Like I always try it. I write some article in it, go to paste it in, and it's like, nope, doesn't work.
Well, I had that problem happen to me today. I wrote something surprisingly on Office because I was using my wife's laptop. I put it to Google Docs, and Google Docs took that and double-spaced everything. So certain things were double-spaced and certain things weren't. And,
yeah, that's a big part of the formatting problem.
And it drove me crazy because I had to spend 10 minutes and go through everything and make sure like everything was typed correctly. It wasn't whacked out. How do you think the sales are going to be for this one? Because this is the first time that they've pretty much said like, here, it's virtually free. It's $10 a month. There's no excuse to go and pirate this thing.
Well, here's the funny bit. So this is a win-win, right? It's a win for users because they're going to get a lot more out of Office than they've ever been able to get out of it. It's a win for Microsoft because actually the dark side of this is a lot of people will end up paying a little bit more for Office than they did in the past. There's no doubt about it. $99 a year is a great deal for what you're getting, but it's also more than most people were paying. It might cause people to go legitimate. It might cause people to basically get a copy or two more of Office than they might have done otherwise. In other words, my kids have different needs at different ages. I mean, my youngest daughter, I might say, well, she doesn't really need Office, or we'll keep her on an old version. Now it doesn't matter. I pay the $99. Everyone gets a copy of the latest version and all those upgrades that come along as we go. But yeah, I mean, I think part of the aspect to this is, I'm not a normal consumer because obviously I'm heavily invested in the Microsoft space, but it's hard to know what I would have done as a normal consumer. But as far as like getting Office, most people get it, like I said, with a new computer. They get the one copy, and they don't upgrade to the next version. They wait till the version after that because that's when the normal PC refresh is. So this is a way to get people on the latest version of Office more quickly and to have kind of a regular stream of income, which has always been Microsoft's goal. So again, I think it benefits everyone. It's definitely a win-win, but technically, will most people end up paying a little bit more for Office than they did? Probably.
Yeah.
But the benefit is amazing. In other words, they're not just overcharging people, right? I mean, or they're not overcharging people, I should say. They're incenting you to spend a reasonable amount of money to get a lot of value out of those things.
By the way, it's installed. I'm all done.
Yeah.
It was great that I didn't have to put a
I haven't done this on
CDT.
the Mac yet, so I'm not sure what the...
Yeah, to set up your email exchange. No, I don't want to do it. Make Outlook your default. I don't want to do that. What's new? How do I just get out of here? Come on. I don't want to import anything.
Thank you.
Okay, so here it is. So here's Outlook for people who've never seen it on a Mac.
Yep.
That's it. Very easy. Very, very easy. Yeah. So now when, let's say I access your files anywhere. Okay, so if I'm with this, let's say I collaborate in real time. Okay, I don't want to learn more. I just want to continue. Mm-hmm. So let's say I write something. Does it automatically back it up to my cloud whatever?
So by default, if you get Office 2013 through Office 365, by default it logs into your Microsoft account and saves everything by default to SkyDrive.
But not on 2011. But not on 2011.
Yeah, I don't know how the Mac works.
Okay, so it will.
By the way, but here's how it could work on the Mac. I know this will work. In other words, one of the things you could do on the Mac is you could install the SkyDrive app on the Mac, right? You could change your documents folder to point to some documents folder in SkyDrive. Thus, all of your Office docs will save automatically to that, and you will be saving to SkyDrive through the file system. It will work automatically. So that will work fine.
How about the Outlook emails? Does that save it to the cloud also for 2013?
So I have no idea. No, well, so I don't know how the Mac thing works.
No. I'm saying for Windows. For Windows.
Yeah. So the not so subtle shift that's occurring on the Windows side is that Outlook 2013, like other email applications, can be used in this kind of old-fashioned way where you have your PSD file and you kind of save everything down to it. But the way it should be used is you connect to your Microsoft account using Exchange ActiveSync. The truth is in the cloud. You're seeing a view of it in the application, just as you would on Windows Phone, just as you would in the Mail app and the Calendar app and the People app on Windows RT. And it's just a cached local version of something that's in the cloud. You're not downloading email with a POP account and having it always be on that one computer. Though, by the way, you could if you wanted to.
You could, but I don't want to do that. I don't trust myself.
So I don't know. Mac, I have no idea. But as far as the Windows version goes, yeah, I mean, that's how things are going forward. It's Outlook, right? So Outlook is a crazy complex application that does all kinds of stuff. It will support the old-fashioned ways of doing it, no doubt about it. But the primary use case is the new cloud-based way of doing things.
You know what I could do now, Paul? I could find the CD I have somewhere of like 14 years of PST files and just load them up on here and go through all my old emails.
I pray to God that you don't do that. But yeah,
here's my question. I have all this stuff backed up on some CD. I mean, I've lost a lot of my emails, but I have PST files for like 15 years worth of emails. I could technically, with Outlook 2013, I could load them up on here and everything goes to the cloud, right?
Well, it wouldn't automatically go to a cloud. You'd have to copy it.
I got to copy it over, but I can't.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the ways you can do this. I mean, if you have a lot of local email and you want to get them into a Gmail account or whatever, and configure both accounts. Well, configure the PSD file, configure the Gmail account, and copy and paste.
Yeah, that's great. I'm very excited for this.
Don't
Very
do it during
nerdy.
the show.
I'm going to do it during the show. We're going to sit here. We're not even going to talk. I'm just going to put the camera on the computer and just do it that way. Very cool. I'm very excited for this, actually.
Yeah.
And then, people accuse me of being a Mac fanboy, but I'm very excited for this Microsoft.
No, listen, I mean, honestly, and anyone who listens to this podcast or Windows Weekly or whatever will appreciate what I'm about to say. If you go back to last fall and that giant launch event thing that they had, there are some things I feel very strongly about that I don't have a lot of bad things. Like Windows Phone 8 to me is fantastic. But Windows 8, Windows RT, Surface RT, Surface Pro, a lot of hedging there, you know? There's a lot of stuff I like about those products, but they're all compromises in some way, and you always have to mention these caveats, and there's a lot to discuss. As far as I'm concerned, Office 2013 and Office 365 Home Premium, to me, are no-brainers for the market that they target, which is not necessarily every single individual on Earth, but families and people who have a need for installing Office on multiple PCs, whoever they may be. $99 a year for Office of this magnitude, with all the other stuff that you get, is a tremendous value. Assuming you need it. Yeah. I mean, obviously not everyone needs it, but to me, it's such a no-brainer.
People want to know before we move on. When does the Office preview expire?
I actually have no idea. I'm sorry. Okay. The problem is I'd have to look this up. I switched over to the final version long ago because I've been testing it. So I don't even... Someone had asked me, do you have to uninstall the preview before you uninstall the final version? I'm sorry to say I don't remember. I just don't remember. Sorry.
Okay. Hey, Paul, it is that time, and it's that time to thank Audible.com for supporting What the Tech. We're big Audible fans here at the GFQ Network. I know many of our viewers are big Audible fans. And if you don't have an Audible account, guess what? You can get a free audiobook if you go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. They have over 100,000 downloadable titles to choose from, which is, you know what the amazing part of this is? 3 years ago when we started advertising for Audible on some of the other shows that we have, it was 65,000 titles to choose from. So, I mean, they're just adding more and more books to Audible almost every single day, which is amazing. Paul's pick this week, I'm really excited for it. I actually own this book. It was actually I got it a while ago, but it's an amazing pick. Paul, what is your Audible pick of the week?
It's called World War Z.
Amazing.
I read this in like paper form, whenever it came out a few years back, and I actually just purchased it on Audible because I wanted to go through it again. I was on kind of a Walking Dead kick recently. I read every single one of those graphic novels that they have, which are good. I can't say that they're fantastic, but they're good. The art is okay, and I'm kind of always been intrigued by these post-apocalyptic dystopian, stories, and zombies, of course, are inherently interesting. But World War Z is a great story, and make sure you get the unabridged version, which oddly enough. Oh, here it is. Okay, I was going to say it's not here for some reason, but there it is. So there's an abridged and an unabridged version. Actually, now that I've logged into Audible, it says, "We're sorry, due to publishing rights, we are not authorized to sell this item in the country where you live." Do you see that?
No, I don't.
Are you logged in?
No, I'm not logged in.
That's why. You might have to get the abridged version. Damn it.
Really? What?
That makes me sad. Well, the story is basically a telling of the apocalypse that occurs, and it moves around the world as the plague does, right? So that it's these kind of like on the ground reporting type things of people who are experiencing what's going on as this happens. A lot of it takes place in Asia, and it's an amazing story. It's one of the really, really well done. I'm really depressed.
It is, and they explain a lot of the details, like the zombies in World War Z. They could walk underwater.
Yeah.
So one of the stories.
By the way,
was,
this is being made into a movie.
Yeah, I'm not too happy about that. Did you see the preview?
No, does it look bad?
Yeah, Brad Pitt's in it.
So that's
who wants to watch Brad Pitt?
This should be a great movie. That's too bad.
Yeah. I wonder if this is the. Let me see. Sign in.
No, I've been shut down.
Oh, hold on. Let me. I don't even know my login right now. Okay, I can't even tell you. But the abridged version's also on there, so you might get
the abridged version works. You can get the abridged version.
And this is 14 hours. The abridged version, it's going to be a little less, but still a great book to pick. Anything with zombies in World War II. You put Nazi zombies together, and I'm all into it. I mean, that's all I need. That's all I need.
One of the worst like schlocky movies I've ever seen in my life was a World War II zombie Nazi, takes place on a beach kind of thing.
You know what I watched? I watched that. God, what is the name? Iron Sky, which is about the Nazis that live on the moon and they invade the Earth. Yes. One of the worst things I've ever seen. But I sat there and I watched it because I thought it would be some kind of interesting movie, but it wasn't. This is a great pick. World War Z, great book. I'm sure the audiobook is fantastic.
It's too bad the abridged version. It's only the abridged version.
Yeah, because the abridged version came out a couple years ago and I got it. I remember listening to that. That was actually one of the first audiobooks that I got in recent times.
Oh, really?
The first audiobook that I got is years ago. It was Along Came a Spider by James Patterson. One of the first audiobooks I've ever heard. I don't know if it was with Audible.
Those early Alex Cross books are great.
Yeah, phenomenal. Great pick, Paul. audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. Get your free audiobook. This week's pick was World War Z. Thanks, Paul. We're a little bummed that the abridged version is not.
I'm bummed.
That's the only one that's available. But
that's depressing.
Yeah, still get it. So we're going to do Q&A, guys. The last 10 minutes of the show, we want you guys to send questions for Paul or myself. I'm sure it's going to be mostly for Paul because Paul knows far more than I do.
A lot of them already have sent in the questions, by the way.
Okay, they have. All right, so let me go back up. It'll be no Paul hair questions, by the way. So I'm just going to look. Will the Surface Pro be available at Best Buy on release date?
Yes.
It will be.
Staples.
Yes. Let's go down. Anything else? Anybody? Thank you. My question for Paul is, now that you've had a bit of time since reviewing the Atom-based Samsung ATIF Smart PC 500T, have your thoughts on the performance, stability, and usage scenarios changed? Are regular desktop apps such as VLC, WinRAR, typical little utilities usable?
Yeah.
They are.
This machine would, and any machine like this, any machine based on Clover Trail would be dramatically enhanced by supporting up to 4 gigs of RAM, even with the understanding that it would really be 3.2 or 3.5, whatever. That would make a huge difference. They're still kind of, Atom type machines, but they run PC apps. I mean, Photoshop installs slowly and runs slowly, but it works. I mean, it does work. And you do get the battery life advantage. And so, that's going to be the trade-off. I'll be writing a lot about this kind of stuff when Surface Pro comes out, but there's a big trade-off to be had between Ivory Bridge laptop or tablet that maybe has a fan and is a little bit loud or runs hot and only gets 4.5 to 5 hours of battery life versus ARM-based or Clover Trail-based machine that gets like 8 or 9, 10, whatever hours of battery life, but doesn't run as fast. And so you need to sort of understand for yourself or decide for yourself which of those is more important.
Here's a question that I've gotten. I mean, I've gotten an unbelievable amount of these emails asking the same thing. Paul, do you think Windows 8 will perform well if I upgrade my mom's Pentium 4 XP machine while the cost is still low for the upgrade period?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting just to run the upgrade advisor against that machine
to see what it's like.
If it even said it was okay. That I don't know.
Well, the same question was when Windows 7 came out. What was the experience like on a Pentium 4 for Windows 7? I can't remember.
I think the computers that are that old, it's time to move on. You can buy a brand new Pentium-based computer right now for $300-400.
Yeah, and it'll be far better performance.
Yeah, at that kind of age machine, I wouldn't personally try.
It's tough. I mean, when I'm trying to think what the oldest machine that I have here is, and it's probably a single core AMD, one of these netbook that are a little bit larger, like netbook platform, but in the laptop body.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Let's see. Any more questions up there? Am I missing anything? Why are you using the HTC 8X and not the Lumia 920?
I just like the phone better.
I do also.
I mean, people. It's funny, in any technology group, there are people who love Nintendo. There are people who love Linux. There are people who love Apple, obviously, and there are people who love Nokia, and they can't stand that I'm not using the 20. And I'm sorry, the Nokia absolutely has some advantages over the 8X, including the Nokia apps, which are fantastic, some of them anyway, and the camera, which is better, no doubt about it. But there's something about the 8X. It's just such a beautiful machine. It feels great in your hand. It's the right size, if that makes sense. I happen to. I just love it myself.
This I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this, Paul. From your information that you've received, is the next generation Xbox hardware and software sticking to the leaked document?
Yeah. So there was I can't talk about this too much. There was a document that suggested that there was a sort of an architectural diagram where most of it would be like the hardware that would be in all the machines, and then there was this other part you would tack on that would be like the video game machine. How do I say this? I can't talk about that. I mean, so the way I guess I would say it is that was correct at one point. At the time it was created, it was certainly the idea, and things have changed.
Okay. Paul on Facebook.
Multiple machines.
Hellcat M in chat room says, Paul on Facebook, I saw a picture of a Samsung phone with a flexible screen.
Yeah.
There was just a headline that said Samsung coming out with a phone with a flexible screen. Have you heard anything about this? What do you think of Samsung becoming a preferred partner for Windows?
I don't see that happening because they sell so many Android phones and are making their own OS, right? So Samsung and other companies, I'm sure, have been working on these flexible screens for a while. And this is the dream, right? Because if you drop an iPhone right now, it explodes into a million shards of glass. And what you want is something that will bend with your body if it's in your pocket, or can be really thin, and you can read it sort of like a tiny newspaper on a bus or whatever. So that's clearly the future, but I think it's a ways away. Paul,
any news on Windows Phone 7.8?
No, I mean, like everyone else, I've seen this rumor. It's coming on the 30th or whatever, the 31st. If you trace those rumors back, I don't think they're based on anything. So
why the delay?
Those guys, the Windows Phone guys make me so sad. They make all these promises. They talked about 7.8 primarily to prevent people from bitching too much about the hardware not being upgradable. And they talked about this enthusiast program where people were going to be able to sign up and get early access to updates. And that was to stop people from bitching about the fact that we never got any updates on Windows Phone. And neither one of those things has happened. They've never mentioned the enthusiast program again. I wrote a big article complaining about 7.8, and they kind of responded to that finally early this year now. But I have heard nothing about that since, and
Tech Escape says, Paul and Andrew, if you had to live with only one streaming service, which one would it be?
Well, what type? What does that mean? Like a
I guess
video
like a Hulu or like a Netflix, something like that.
I would take Netflix.
You would take Netflix. I would say Netflix, or I would say something special that I get exclusive access to that nobody else gets.
Well, I mean,
that Paul kind of knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you could spend. One of the dreams with Xbox Music is that Xbox Music would be this one thing, and what if they did like an Xbox video service that had like, that'd be neat. And so far, that's mostly just pie in the sky stuff. But
I mean, I would love with the next generation Xbox to have the option to have full-fledged Fios TV on there with all the channels that I need.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Hulu and Netflix and everything is there. One interface. I don't need to bother with anything, and I could just keep this thing on all day. I mean, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I could browse with it. I do everything I want to do.
Here's the problem. A lot of people want like DVR capabilities in the next Xbox. They want it to look and be just like Windows Media Center, but on this device. Microsoft has to walk a really fine line between the needs of their users, who I think would all prefer basically everything to be online if possible. That the next Halo game comes out, it's something you can download to your console. You don't need stupid discs that can get scratched and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that kills part of the ecosystem. Then you're Xing out, Best Buy, you're getting rid of GameStop. They've got all these side concerns that have nothing to do with you playing games or you enjoying content, if that's the case. And so, the next Xbox will still have optical drives and still have traditional ways of, getting content onto there. And you'll still have to deal with your cable company. Yeah. And I mean, this is just the unfortunate reality
that we're in
of the system they have to work within. Yeah.
And
believe me, I'm sure they want to do exactly the same things you want to do.
And the last question, because Paul needs to get out of here, I'm going to modify this. He said favorite Windows podcast. I'm going to say, what is your favorite podcast other than this one and Windows Weekly?
Wow. My favorite podcast of all is How Did This Get Made?
Which
I
podcast.
love. It's hilarious. It's like a bunch of the guys who run The League, which is also one of my favorite TV shows, and some other comedians. And they always have other guys on, and they just make fun of movies that should never have been made in many cases. And I listened to this thing all the way through, back to the first episode. Like I've now listened to every, and I've never reacted to a podcast like that before. I love that podcast.
Mine, I would have to go with something I discovered recently, and I'm embarrassed because he's been around for a while. Skeptoid.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like a Red podcast. He has a blog, and then he has a podcast form for the blog, and he does things, and he debunks myths like where did the story of the Yeti come from, the crystal skulls. Like it's really cool. He just won a Stitcher Award. Really does a good job. If I have to pick another one, it would have to be anything that Sarah Lane is in.
Really?
Yeah. I like her.
Anything that Sarah Lane is
anything. She could talk about anything.
She literally does.
Yeah. she has like 15 podcasts, and I'll watch Sarah Lane.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I like her. She's very nice to me. She always says hello to me and my cats.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. I just learned something about you.
All right, guys. We got to wrap it up. Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
Go to our website, gfknetwork.com. If you miss any portion of the show, the dog is barking at the wall once again. I guess he's not a fan of Sarah Lane. I guess that's what it is.
She's more of a cat person.
She is more of a cat person. WinSupersite.com for all things Paul Thurrott. Great site. Also does Windows Weekly with the other guy with the gray hair. I forgot his name. Oh, yeah, Leo Laporte. There you go.
Jeez, that's me, actually.
Yeah. The guy with the gray hair. It's you. And Mary Jo Foley. Great shows. And anything else, Paul? Working on... Wait a minute. Are you coming to New York? February?
No, not that I know of, although that could change because the next week is the Surface stuff, and it's possible there may be a launch event there. If there is, we'll probably come there for that.
Oh, fun.
But I don't know if that's happening or not. So
we could booze it up in New York.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Hopefully, actually. Well, we'll see. I'm going to try. If I can, I will. Let's put it that way.
All right, guys. Again, if you missed any portion of the show, you can catch it on pretty much any place that podcasts are available. On iTunes, on Windows Phone, on our website, on Paul's website, and definitely send us your feedback, like your comments, especially the ones about you having a naked discussion with Paul Thurrott. Those are my favorite emails. And by the way, that is not a joke. That is a legitimate email that we received this week. Whoever you are, you made my day and my week and possibly my year. On that note, we'll see y'all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody.